Muy buenos días. Les invitamos a tomar asiento, por favor. Nos
Good morning.
encontramos en el
Please take your seats. We are currently at the international seminar entitled CAF Strategic Framework for Security and Justice for Development. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is truly a pleasure for us to welcome you to this event organized by CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean. This institution, since 1968, has been fostering sustainable development and regional integration. It has been working closely with public and private sectors in more than 20 countries. Today, we are joined here at the Police Science Academy of Carabineros de Chile as part of the launching event of CAF's Strategic Framework for Security and Justice for Development. This strategic framework is a decisive response to the growing challenges related to a lack of security and transnational organized crime. These are key components for democracy and sustainable development in our region. We are joined here today by the Undersecretary of the Interior of Chile, Luis Cordero, Carolina Leitao Alaves Salamanca, members of the high level of command of Carabineros de Chile, Mr. Davila, as the Carabineros Comptroller. We are also joined by experts in cross-border aspects, criminal investigations, and the heads of the private area investigations for Carabineros de Chile. I would also like to greet Sergio Granillos Granados, the Executive Secretary of CAF, who is leading this initiative and which aims to strengthen interinstitutional coordination, international cooperation, and foster effective partnerships that will secure a safer and fairer region of Latin America and the Caribbean for all. I would also like to greet everyone who is following us online, the streaming component from different Latin American and Caribbean nations. Now, we will hear from the Undersecretary of the Interior, Luis Cordero Vega, who will provide us with some welcoming remarks.
La señora subsecretaria de Prevención del Delito,
the Undersecretary of Crime Prevention, Carolina Alvarez Salamanca, will actually be providing us with the welcoming remarks.
Muy buenos días a todas y a todos.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I would also like to echo the recent appreciations and welcoming remarks and greet you on behalf of the Undersecretary of the Interior, Luis Cordero. He is fully committed to this event here today. Unfortunately, when called upon by the President of the Republic, he needs to come calling. So it is my turn to be here in his stead to lead a debate that is so crucial for our country and for the rest of the countries throughout our region and around the globe. So I would like to thank Sergio Granados, the Executive Secretary of CAF, for the invitation, Gian Camos, who is our host here, the General Inspector of Carabineros, and Mr. Fuentes, Mr. Richardson as well from the United States, Ivan Marquez, the Secretary for Multidimensional Security of the OAS, and other authorities, ministers, former undersecretaries, Carabineros, former Congress members, and members of the different law enforcement agencies of the countries in the region and of Chile, of the Carabineros de Chile. So for me, it is very important to appraise and underscore the valuable contributions of CAF since CAF joined the bank. because this is a regional bank, and as such, it allows us to address a security crisis from an integrated approach and from a territorial approach as well. This territorial perspective and approach is something that I experienced as mayor, and today as undersecretary, I continue to value this in my different relationships with mayor's offices and territorial leaders throughout the country and regions, through the different regional government offices as well that I have worked with quite closely and continue to. So today we have joined efforts to talk about transnational organized crime and insecurity. We know that these components affect the development of our region. Now, this event is specifically an example of how one can provide support for what we're doing under different approaches and through different regional policies to make progress. I would like to tell you that in Chile, we are fighting a very difficult fight against transnational organized crime and insecurity. Hasn't been difficult, but we are gaining ground and we will not quit until we win. Now, why hasn't it been easy? Well, because citizens and society obviously demand fast results and outcomes because this is an urgent issue. And also, this is a frustrating, a tiresome task when we do not receive the results we are seeking so quickly. That's why we know that it's important to disseminate the outcomes and the successes wider and broader, particularly since this is an electoral year. It makes it a bit more challenging because often there are different debates that are discussed in the public realm, but not because of that, we will no longer prioritize an agenda that has a specific impact on society's well-being. Now, what is this agenda about? Well, during this administration, the government has had an agenda that has involved different public institutions and civil society and different organizations in different realms. Again, this is not an agenda that is just administration led. It is led by the administration, but it is a working agenda as well, carried out in conjunction with the police force and different stakeholders. And it includes 5 key pillars. 1, institutional strengthening. Second, robust policies against transnational organized crime. 3, implementing concrete specific plans within the different territories. 4, comprehensive reinforcement of crime prevention. And 5th, reaching agreements, state-level agreements regarding security. Now, why did I decide to start with this? I would like to focus on prevention because prevention is key for addressing the deep-seated causes of crime. We know that community participation is key and a territorial approach is also key. We believe that this will allow us to strengthen the ties in society that foster social cohesion. When we work with the different stakeholders, you can have adapted, comprehensive approaches that are locally adapted. Prevention improves security as well as the quality of lives and development opportunities of specifically boys, girls, and young people. This is a strategic component for the well-being of our countries. It's also a responsible way to face the present. We believe that prevention is an investment, and that is why since 2022 to date, we have doubled the budget specifically under the Undersecretariat for Prevention, and we've done this through different plans and programs which have enabled us to expand our territorial coverage, to reinforce municipal capacity, to innovate in new programs, to work with new technologies, and to work closer with the police in order to design instruments that will allow us to have reliable data. For example, the homicide rate. We know that this is something often debated publicly. You can only improve what you measure, and that's why one of the most significant improvements has been to design a common methodology to count the number of homicides in Chile. Several years ago, each institution managed its own figure, own rate, and there wasn't an official rate. But today, thanks to the joint efforts, a state-level effort, we have worked with 16 organizations, institutions, and we have a consolidated figure. And twice a year, we publish an exact date. And thanks to quality data, we have made a leap forward in terms of this initiative. And of course, we have worked on legislation as well. And this legislation has allowed us to move forward with 60 draft bills regarding security. One was recently passed and allows for the effective implementation of a new prosecutor ministry as of April. Now, this will allow us to better link different policies related to these matters. We have also invested in strengthening state-level capacities, specifically in the technological realm. For quite a while, investments were focused on installing cameras, and the outcome of that was a deterrence. Of course, that was helpful for investigations, but today we are taking a qualitative leap. We are fostering integration of these systems and employment of AI. We have a teleprotection, a remote protection system as well that aims to articulate different public and private systems nationwide based on artificial intelligence for data analysis. In April, we will also add more than 2,000 surveillance cameras in the metropolitan region, and we will also have a variety of different devices to protect citizens. We have more than 13 bands, groups around the city that have been dismantled. These are car theft groups and bands, and thanks to police work, we have been able to dismantle them. And this is also thanks to technology that allows us to find lost individuals or individuals who are on the lam. And as a result of all of this, you know that artificial intelligence works with millions of pieces of data and allows for working jointly with different institutions in order to optimize investigations. And all of this is crucial. Again, we have programs that have worked quite well. One is called Lazos. It's an early crime prevention program for young people, and we work with their families to reduce the risk of them falling prey to the to crime, to becoming criminals. And thanks to this program, we have increased the number of beneficiaries. We have reinforced its implementation comprehensively in all the different communities where it has been rolled out. We have increased the budget 50% from 21 to 25, and we have launched new innovative programs such as Comunidad Crece and others that aim to do away with this cycle of violence in the different territories. Of course, strengthening the police forces is key as well. The government, in addition to all of the measures mentioned, has boosted the police force information systems and has put more police on the streets thanks to legislative efforts, marine forces as well, and investigative police. As I mentioned, the new Ministry of Public Security will come into effect on April 1st, and this has resulted in a series of benefits. One, we can separate the different functions of the ministries from the Ministry of the Interior, the Ministry of Crime Prevention, so that there will be political policy level coordination among both of the ministries for a while. And secondly, this allows for greater institutional capacity and specialization because this new ministry will be able to implement specialized policies with specific teams, will be expert in controlling transnational organized crime and other aspects. It will also allow to reinforce civil control of the police. This is a key step forward in the modernization of police forces and democratization. This ministry there will be an undersecretary to public security as well, which will be working directly with the police forces to boost planning, budget control, and assessment of performance. We also have created a new institutional arrangements regarding security. For example, the National Public Security Council, the National Crime Prevention Council, a national security agency. Moreover, another key crucial component is the decentralization of security administration. We will be reinforcing ties with regional governments with regard to crime prevention and taking back public spaces by providing new capacity to the police with more operational autonomy. And we have different regional ministerial public security councils as well. So I would like to again thank you for the invitation today. The work organized by CAF has been truly crucial for our region, for our well-being. We know that security is a complicated concept both regionally and nationally and internationally. So therefore, I would like to reinforce our appreciation for CAF's efforts. CAF has allowed to different regional actors, stakeholders to share experiences, to learn from our mistakes and our successes. Thanks to exchanging good practices, we will be more successful in this common battle. And again, I have just briefly described what we are doing in Chile. We know that there's so much more to do, but we also know that we are full of hope. So you have our ongoing support, and we will be here to reinforce joint efforts. I'm surely, truly convinced that the only way to successfully embrace this challenge is together. Thank you.
Damos las gracias. A continuación se dirigirá a los presentes el general inspector don
Next, General Gian Camus Davila, General Controller of Carabineros de Chile, will address the audience.
Bueno, parto mis palabras
Let me
primero.
start my remarks by first welcoming all those of you who are here visiting Carabineros de Chile, especially this Academy of Police Science, where the future command of the institution is trained. Mrs. Carolina Leitao Alvarez Salamanca, Undersecretary of Crime, Mr. Rodrigo Nicora from Paraguay, CEO of CAF, Sergio Díaz Granados, ladies and gentlemen, officers of Chilean police forces and foreign police forces, multidimensional security officer, Mr. Ivan Marquez, authorities that are here present, special guests, speakers, members of the different specialities of Carabineros de Chile, OS 7, OS 9, CEP, and Labocar. Ladies and gentlemen, the threats posed by the new crime modes, organized crime, and cybercrime, just like the phenomenon of migration, have become transcendental worldwide, undoubtedly a new and challenging context that demands for strong response, well coordinated and also comprehensive with the purpose of reinforcing order, security, tranquility, peace, and even the international stability. In this potential scenario and future scenario, promoting professional cooperation, signing of strategic alliances, and the exchange of information as well as of expertise and practices among states, peer forces, and experts are key instances in order to achieve success when analyzing and developing firm and sustainable and robust strategies when facing these scourges that create so much intranquility in our peoples. It is because of that reason that this international seminar, the Security and Justice for the Development of Latin America and the Caribbean, is so important because its main pillar is the launching of the CAF's strategic framework for security and justice for development. A key initiative that is intended to strengthen policies and regarding citizen security and justice in Latin America and the Caribbean. In this context, we'd like to thank the presence of the high-level authorities and prestigious international experts that are here with us. Thank you very much for actively participating in honoring us with your presence in this specific site where our carabineros are trained. Our Academy of Police, Science Academy of Carabineros de Chile, where our officers are trained in order to exercise a superior leadership. We hope that this venue will foster dialogue and networking in order to optimize the type of work we perform for the benefit of our countries and for all our inhabitants. On behalf of Mr. Marcelo Reyes Zapata, our Director General, we express or welcome as an institution. We are walking towards the celebration of our 100 years, and seminars of this international level are an invaluable contribution to make the type of work we do even more robust. We are here fostering and implementing a master plan that has been well defined, that is based on 7 lines of strategic action, reinforcing our presence out in the field as well as controlling enforcement, investigation, intervention, and communication. A set of articulated actions through intelligence in order to deploy a highly effective, professional, collaborative action, effective, efficient, that is also transparent, and especially respectful of the fundamental rights of all people. That is our major commitment in the strategic vision that we are promoting and fostering as an institution, even beyond our own national borders, because our intent is to be role models both nationally and internationally. We are Carabineros de Chile, the police of all, and Carabineros for the world. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos las palabras de mi general.
I'd like to thank the General for his kind remarks. Next, let me introduce a video that will present the main figures and context of security and justice in the region. Latin America and the Caribbean are facing a crisis that limits its development and the well-being of its citizens. Insecurity, crime, violence, and corruption erode our institutions and threaten stability in the region. With only 8% of the world population, the region is responsible for 1/3 of the global homicide figures. 9 out of the 10 most violent cities in the world are located in Latin America. 50% of citizens do not feel safe. Trust on institutions is quite low. 80% of people in Latin America consider that justice in their country is unjust. 50% mistrust police forces, and half of the victims of minor crimes won't even report them. Violence hits even stronger on the youth. 80,000 homicides a year affect people between 15 and 29 years of age. 90% of these victims are men of vulnerable contexts. Gender violence is a silent crisis. 1 out of 3 women will suffer from sexual violence in their lives. These figures are even more alarming among adolescents and girls. Transnational organized crime has become consolidated in the region. Today, Latin America leads 12 out of the 15 global criminal markets. Criminal bands exploit natural resources, the human capital, and regional logistics in order to consolidate themselves globally. 50% of homicides are connected to organized crime groups. Money laundering associated to the winnings from illicit and criminal activities facilitated the expansion of these criminal networks, infiltrating legitimate sectors, corrupting institutions and weakening them. This crime and corruption cycle erodes the trust on the state, hinders economic and social development, and endangers the democratic governance model. Crime has also evolved. Cybercrime grows exponentially with more than 3 million attacks every day in the region, affecting governments, businesses, and citizens. The development institutions have warned us about this as a barrier to progress. The United Nations Program for Development, OAS, IDB, ICLAC, coincide on that. Without security, there's no possible inclusive development. It is a time to act. A multidimensional approach is key. Security, justice, prevention, development, and institutional strengthening must go hand in hand. The challenge demands collaboration among governments, civil society, and the private sector, strengthening institutional resilience and fostering social cohesion. A safe future is possible. In order to make progress in development in Latin America and the Caribbean, must face decisively the scourge of crime and insecurity. Without security, there's no possible development.
A continuación, el señor Díaz Granados,
Mr. Diaz Granados, CEO of CAF, will present the new strategic CAF proposal.
Señora Subsecretaria de Prevención del Delito del
Undersecretary
Ministerio.
of Crime Prevention of the Ministry of Interior, Mrs. Carolina Leitao, General Jan Camus Dávila, Minister of Justice from Paraguay, Mr. Rodrigo Nicora, General Laura Richardson from the Commander of the U.S. Southern Command, Director of the Police Science Academy, Mr. Vice CEO, Mr. Giampiero Leoncini, Agustín Iglesias, Mayor of Independencia, Hernán Larraín, former Minister of Justice, Mr. Jorge Burgos, former Minister of the Interior, Mr. Juan Carlos Pinzón, former Minister of the Defense of Colombia, Ivan Marquez, multidimensional security officer of OAS, representative of CAF in Chile, Julian Suarez, Mr. Advisor to CAF, Lea Jimenez, and Carlos Charmer. I'd like to also thank Carlos for the work they have already conducted in order to prepare this strategy in record time, of course, working in coordination for the entire bank's team. I'd like to Tuesday Reitano, Global Initiative Against Crime, Lucia Damer, an international expert on crime and justice, and academic of Universidad Santiago de Chile, Mr. Rodrigo Uvilla, former Undersecretary of Security in Chile. I would like to greet the police forces of America, Latin America, Asia, and their delegates. Close to 38 delegations are represented here. We'd like to also greet people online, and would like to thank you, of course, Carabineros de Chile and the Chilean government and the Academy of Police Sciences for hosting us and providing us with this platform to conduct the launching of CAF's strategic framework for security and justice for development. This is more than an academic venue or technical venue for discussion. We are setting a milestone with a regional scope from Mexico to Argentina, including our islands in the Caribbean. We are trying to promote a strong alliance among government authorities, security forces, representatives of the multilateral organizations, academics, civil society leaders, in order to ratify our commitment to citizens' security with justice and democratic stability. The framework we'd like to introduce today is for the entire region. It is a specific tool that is born of months of work with different stakeholders in the region, and all of them are coming from different walks of life, visions and realities and experiences, if you wish, have contributed to diagnose, analyze, and propose solutions to face one of the worst and persistent obstacles in the region's development, which is insecurity, violence, and the weakness of our institutions that are, of course, associated to organized crime and impunity. We've always wondered why a development bank, especially CAF, is involved in the topics related to security and justice. Possibly these are areas that have been marginal or excluded from the context of multilateral financial institutions. And the answer is robust. Without security, it is not possible to achieve development. And without development, it is not possible to achieve justice. CAF has been working for several years already on security-related topics. In fact, 11 years ago, CAF submitted a report on economy and development regarding the perspective on crime prevention and control. However, we see also how since 2015, in among the indicators in order to achieve development or the objectives in order to achieve development, one that is specific about peace, justice, and sound institutions. This shows that you cannot isolate topics related to security, but they need to be connected to the rest of the dimension of sustainable development. We are concerned about the expansion of transnational organized crime that possibly is the greatest contemporary threat on Latin America and the Caribbean. And this runs in parallel with climate crisis and stagnation of our economies. Those three expressions are the ones that are of the utmost concern for our development bank. And there are two trends as well that are reinforcing each other. And the first one is the very high and persistent levels of insecurity and violence, as we saw in the video. And the second one is structural weakness and persistent weakness of our public institutions. It is insecurity that is impacting investment, reducing productivity, also hindering opportunities and increasing poverty, and also worsening inequalities.
As we saw earlier, Latin America is one of the most violent regions of the world, with homicide rates that surpass significantly global averages. In Latin America, there are roughly 400,000 murders in the region, and it's just more than figures, because these are human lives that are actually lost. These are communities that are broken down and up, families that are destroyed, and we know that the region's potential is systematically being whittled away. We have also seen in the video that this is these aspects disproportionately affect the less fortunate and certain groups and boys and girls, adolescents, and has an impact on their social inclusion and affecting their opportunities. Now, we know that there are direct and indirect costs of crime on the GDP at 3.5%, in fact, of the regional GDP. Now, this obviously has an impact on infrastructure, health, education, and brings about a lack of trust, which is not the case of Chile. Half of the population in Latin America and the Caribbean do not trust the police force. Now, we know that our region hosts one of the most active groups of transnational organized crime. During the initial remarks, welcoming remarks, we also saw how the region is heading up 12 out of 15 global criminal markets, leading the figures. These markets include drug trafficking, illegal arms trafficking, human trafficking, environmental crimes, illegal mining, among other areas. This is a perverse situation, unprecedented, with high levels of insecurity and violence that are weakening our institutional arrangements. Now I would like to refer to the current situation in the region. Our region has increasingly fewer children. The birth rate has dropped. The region grew by 115% before the 80s, and from the 80s to 2010, the growth rate was 63%, and from 2025 to 2050, the growth rate as projected will be 9%, barely. And there is a relationship between despair, lack of trust, and a weakening democracy. Now, according to ECLAC, there are 19 million young people in this region who do not either study or work. 1 out of every 5 members of the youth, age 15 to 19, are in this situation. And this is a population group that is exposed as such to organized crime. And there are other groups of individuals who are not covered by a pension system or a social security system. So we are facing a very challenging scenario in Latin America. We have adults that are not covered by pension system and young people who neither work nor study. Now, we are truly convinced that this situation brings about political, economic, and social tensions. And now, given this, we have seen that organized crime has taken full advantage of these tensions. This confirms that strategy plus policy, security strategies need to remain in place over time in order to be successful. And there is also a gender bonus in the region that is positive, and it's important to strengthen that and strengthen public-private partnerships as well. Now, I have described the situation often, the situation of despair, and I have also referred to a model or a company, which is Sweden. And there is a group of companies that has actually tried to provide opportunities to young children ages 13 to 19 to keep them away from the criminal networks. And this country, in fact, has a social security model that is integrated, comprehensive, and we know that not a single country around the globe is exempt from potential impacts of organized crime. But in any event, CAF has come up with solutions that are in keeping with our possibilities and our challenges. And we fund specific programs, but we also foster integrated social, inclusive, democratic development. And as a regional body, we work in a trustworthy, neutral, articulated fashion with different stakeholders, private sector, academia, civil society, state organizations, and our efforts regarding public security have primarily been focused on urban responses and on fighting some of the more intense crimes. That was in the past. But today, we know that we need to do more. We cannot work in an isolated fashion if we are going to tackle this large issue. So today, our mission goes beyond the traditional approach that in the past was specifically focused on law and police enforcement agencies. Today, we include a variety of different dimensions such as prevention, protection for victims, rehabilitation, and social reinsertion as key components of a single coordinated, effective system. Now, we have to quickly go from strategy to action. That's our challenge. And to do so, we have come up with this structure that focuses on key prevention areas. There are 5 key areas. The first is prevention and citizen protection, and reactive actions, reinforcing police forces, reinforcing a criminal investigation. We have also worked on moving forward with effective and reliable, trustworthy police systems. This involves modernizing the penitentiary systems and having comprehensive support and rehabilitation services. Now, we have these 5 areas, and we have included 3 key components throughout. We know that our work is based on information, it's evidence-based, and on results impact, citizen participation, and other components. Now, the strategy that we are presenting today is a true reflection of our belief that economic growth, democratic stability, and social inclusion are tied to our collective ability to tackle the violence and insecurity challenges. This framework provides a specific roadmap based on certain objectives, and it aligns technical, financial, and institutional resources that are available to us. We cannot have prosperous, inclusive, or democratic societies if we are unable to provide our citizens with transparent, effective, and accessible justice. This crisis of security is extremely complex. However, we do have a very unique opportunity today to tackle this with decisive, innovative strategies. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank
A
you.
continuación,
Now, I would like to offer the floor to the Undersecretary of Crime Prevention, Ms. Carolina Leitao, and the Jen Camus Davila, who is the Carabineros Inspector, Mr. Ivan Marquez as well, Secretary for Multidimensional Security of the OAS, the Minister of Justice of Paraguay, Mr. Rodrigo Nicola.
será la entrega simbólica del marco estratégico.
There will be a symbolic delivery of the strategic framework for security and justice for development of CAF. This is the symbolic presentation and delivery of the framework.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very
Invitamos a
much.
permanecer al señor Díaz
I would like to invite Mr. Granados to remain up here. Díaz Granados, please remain here. We would like to invite you to receive by Carabineros de Chile a token of our recognition. Mr. Jan Davos Gavila will be giving this to you.
Bien, damos la bienvenida a la general en
Allow
situación de
me
retiro.
to welcome retired General Laura Richardson, former commander of the U.S. Southern Command. She will be providing us with an opening keynote lecture entitled Regional Security and International Cooperation.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Bom dia. I would like to thank our amazing host, CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, and President Sergio Diaz Granados for inviting me to speak to you today. And to the ministers, the police, the military that are here, my regards, and thank you for hosting me in your country, the country of Chile. I just retired from the U.S. Army on the 1st of January of this year and concluded my time as the commander of U.S. Southern Command. It was truly my honor to serve in this capacity and assist countries' militaries and public security forces and their defense capabilities to promote a more safe and secure and prosperous Western Hemisphere. To me, there's no greater personal reward than to give back to our own neighbors and our neighborhood. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here in Santiago, Chile, with all of you and engaging in such an important and relevant forum on security and justice for Latin America development. This forum is occurring on the heels of a few global shocks rippling through the world in the last 3 months. The US inaugurated President Trump for a second term. The World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland was a few days later. And following this, the end of January, CAF hosted the first ever International Economic Forum with a lineup, and this was in Panama, and it was with a lineup of global headline speakers, panels, and collaboration not seen on this level before. Also across the globe, we have seen a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas come and go, and negotiations are still ongoing for a Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. On the horizon this year in 2025, the upcoming global forums include the G7 summit in Canada in June, the UN Ocean Conference in France in June, COP30 is in Brazil this year in November, and the G20 in France is also in November. And while it's not a global forum, the 10th Summit of the Americas will take place in the Dominican Republic in December. The theme for the 2025 Summit of the Americas is building a secure and sustainable hemisphere with shared prosperity. This high-level event will address human security from a multidimensional perspective, focusing on key areas such as citizen security, food security, energy security, and water security. The context of this theme for Summit of the Americas is that despite economic advances, the Americas continues to struggle with high levels of poverty, inequality, and violence. Citizen insecurity, organized crime, and the effects of climate change are growing threats that require a coordinated and multilateral response. And here we are in Santiago, with CAF hosting this very important, relevant, and timely topic of security and justice for development. For my remarks today, I was asked to speak specifically about regional security and international cooperation. And so to set the stage of where we are and to provide my recommendations for where we need to go, we need to understand what has happened the past few years that has led us to where we are today. With COVID-19 and the strict lockdown measures that were in place, criminal activities were significantly disrupted. However, organized crime groups were very quick to adapt and shifted their focus to other criminal markets, such as extortion, cybercrime, and black market trade. As the region emerged from COVID, restrictions went away and supply chains opened back up. Criminal organizations expanded their previous traditional illicit activities linked to the drug trade, and then they also held on to their newfound success with the new markets. As a result, the region has been fertile ground to the entire spectrum of criminal activity by criminal markets, criminal actors, and transnational organized crime. There has also been a complete paradigm shift as well from a couple years ago when law enforcement would focus on crimes that were occurring only inside of the country, within their country's borders. That perspective is no longer true. And as all of you know firsthand, globalization combined with technology advances, also travel, trade, and communication have broken down barriers and borders. Drug traffickers, human traffickers, terrorists, cyber actors, illegal mining actors, they have never had it so easy to take advantage of technology and a global community to do harm. As an example is a gang like MS-13, which doesn't operate in just one city or region anymore. They have become global. Illicit drugs like fentanyl are readily available on the dark net. Human trafficking of children is another issue. These are all examples of global issues that require global solutions. In Latin America and the Caribbean, negative trends are plentiful. High levels of violence, crime, insecurity, coupled with low confidence in the effectiveness of the state and its institutions to counter it. This region has been considered the most violent region in the world for several years, as we just heard in the video. And currently 9 of the 10 most violent cities worldwide are here in Latin America, according to the Council on Criminal Justice. And 17 of the 20 countries with the highest homicide rates are also in the region, according to the UNDP. Government effectiveness in the region has historically been low, and 50% distrust the police, according to Gallup, and is the lowest level of police trust globally. I know that's a lot of statistics, but I think it's necessary to the discussion of Latin America and the Caribbean when the region is ranking in the top 10 globally for different criminal markets. To give you an idea of the aggressive pace transnational organized crime operates at, the Global Organized Crime Index report added 5 new criminal markets to the already list of 10 criminal markets for a total of 15 now. Financial crimes, cyber independent crimes, illicit trade in excise goods, counterfeit goods, and extortion and protection racketeering were all added to the list. This index report highlights that the Americas has emerged as a hub for global illicit markets, with the region consistently among the top 3 globally in 12 of the 15 markets. For criminality, the Americas is the 3rd most affected continent after Asia and Africa. And criminal markets and actors found in the Americas are present in several of the countries, not just in one of the countries, which shows the reach of these markets and the Americas' importance to illicit global trade. The newly added financial crimes market came out number 1 as the most widespread and predominant form of criminal activity in the world. And cybercrimes are essential tools for the financial crimes and also money laundering, extortion, and fraud. Cybercrime in Latin America has increased significantly, and there were over 3 million cyber attacks that were logged daily in 2024. Corruption in the public sector and state-embedded actors continue to be dominant vectors as well of organized crime, which undermine it and weaken government institutions. The theme for the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, that happened in January was collaboration for the intelligent age. And it described the convergence of today's transformative technologies like AI, clean energy, and quantum computing, and the impact upon countries and economies of reimagining growth, investing in people, safeguarding the planet, and rebuilding trust. And 1 week later, CAF hosted its economic forum in Panama City. The theme was how to return to the path of growth. Another milestone to consider is that we are also concluding the first quarter of the century this year. And I have described the world, and as I have described, the world could not be a more dangerous and complex place. And on top of that, we have entered an era of harsh geostrategic competition, and the race is on. The race to have access to raw materials, new technologies, and access to global trade routes. This is where I see that economic security depends on national security, and without security, you can't have any development. These 3 things go hand in hand, and unlike the past years, this phenomenon of organized crime being transnational, with criminal actors and supply chains spanning national borders and continents, it's absolutely imperative that like-minded democratic countries work together and across the globe in order to stop this vicious cycle of security threats from undermining democracies and getting more powerful. Latin America is just about everything the world needs. I have said many times over the past couple of years that Latin America and the Caribbean are feeding and fueling the world, and has been for the last 10 years, but is not receiving the benefit from it. The region has 31% of the world's fresh water, close to 30% of the world's high and medium potential farmland, supplying over 50% of the world's soybean and over 30% of the world's corn and sugar. Beef production is 23% in the globe. Critical minerals of every type are in Latin America. 60% of the world's lithium, 30% of the world's copper, gold, iron ore, and rare earth elements. The region has nearly 1/5 of the global oil reserves, ranking only behind the Middle East in volume. It also possesses the lungs of the world, with the Amazon being the largest rainforest on Earth and biodiversity that is unmatched. So why is the region not benefit from its own resourcing? Why is the region not benefiting from its own resources that the entire world needs? How can the region better counter vicious security challenges from transnational criminal organizations so it can return to the global stage as the powerful global South? So let's jump in on what we can do to counter the phenomenon. CAF has updated the strategic framework and security and justice for development so that it accounts for the changes in transnational organized crime. And this strategic proposal, as the president just briefed, lays out an integrated approach that is based on 3 guiding principles. The first principle is multidimensional, requiring comprehensive and coordinated policies across multiple sectors beyond traditional security systems, placing citizens and their rights at the center. Number 2, multi-level, promoting collaboration across various government levels, from local to national to transnational. And third, network-based collaboration, facilitating systemic coordination among the state, civil society, private sector, and academia to build greater economic, political, social, and institutional resilience against insecurity. I think CAF is right on target, and the faster that the region can aggressively counter this vicious cycle of threats, the faster it can regain lost ground and create additional economic growth in the hemisphere. From my perspective, having worked with all of your militaries and public security forces for the last 3 years, I have the following recommendations for you that I think are very complementary to the CAF strategic framework proposal. And my 3 recommendations start with: first, countries must use all of your instruments of national power: diplomacy, information, military, and economics. Bringing all of these powerful instruments together, laser focused on strengthening government institutions so you can counter transnational organized crime. Under diplomacy, strong political leadership and governance is where it all starts. Not just but actually governing. Government transparency and accountability is a must so that the right oversized mechanisms are in place and that linkages to organized crime cannot hide within government institutions. National policies and laws and the legal structure that a country has to respond to transnational organized crime is critical. Is your judicial system able to pass and then also enforce judgments on organized crime-related cases? Is organized crime able to influence from within the prison system in your country? International cooperation is key because transnational organized crime is across continents. Criminal networks, criminal actors, and supply chains span the globe. And as I saw in South America, the illegal mining in northern Brazil was connected to the illegal mining in Colombia, which was connected to the illegal mining in Ecuador. Because of this, traditional ways of doing business are not working. And it's absolutely essential that we work together on the global scale. There are numerous international agencies with global reach that work in the Western Hemisphere. There's 2 Interpol offices in the Americas, one in Buenos Aires, the other in San Salvador. You also have from the United States, the Department of State, INL, FBI legal attachés, the Department of Justice's ICITAP, which is Criminal Investigative Training Program, OPDAT, and these all develop strong relationships with criminal justice institutions, and all of these do significant training and investigative work to build partner capacities and capabilities. I'd also like to highlight that we've seen a few good examples in the recent weeks, the great cooperation between the 2 countries of Mexico and the United States, where strong political leadership has been exercised by both countries, with almost instantaneous results from both countries' law enforcement agencies. Mexico extradited 29 high-level organized crime operatives to the US. And with international cooperation, last week they arrested and oversaw and turned over to the US an MS-13 senior leader who was also on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. This type of cooperation is what's needed in all of the Western Hemisphere. President Trump declared a national emergency on the southern border. on the US southern border. He also declared a fentanyl crisis in the United States. And what we see are his actions directly related to this #1 priority. President Sheinbaum has reciprocated with a series of major fentanyl seizures in Mexico. She decreased illegal border crossings, decreased fentanyl transits, and extradited criminals in the US. And she has requested that the United States do more to stop the arms flow south. If we can brand this type of coordination amongst leaders in the region and global, we have a chance to counter the challenges and counter them faster. For the information instrument of national power, all part of DIME, dominating the information space is a must for democratic governments to show that they are delivering security for their people. Countries have their own narrative. Countries have to own their narrative and be relentless and aggressive in this domain to make your countries more safe and secure. You can do all the police and military operations and achieve a lot of progress. But if the population doesn't know about it or hear about it from you in the information space, it may all be for naught. Relationships with the press are a must. You've got to build trust with them, keep them informed, bring them on operations to cover and report firsthand. Be all over social media. Pictures tell a million words. Show the arrests, show the evidence. Another consideration for the low trust ratings for police in some countries is consider doing a national campaign for a national police campaign to build that trust needed with communities. We had to do that in the United States as well in the 1970s when we had the same issue, the same problem. #3, for the military instrument of national power, I will also include police in this category too. Bottom line, all of the militaries and police in the region need to increase capacity and capability to be able to conduct consistent, daily, counter-organized crime operations successfully. Countries must put more resourcing into your defense and security forces, both to increase the overall size and numbers of the forces and also upgrade weapon systems and technology. Too many countries have old, dilapidated equipment, lack sufficient numbers to carry out the daily operations against organized crime, and training is lagging. Countries also lack domain awareness and can't see the threats due to outdated ground-based radar systems, air radar systems, outdated cyber networks, as well as lacking scanner systems at ports and airports. Every time I made the suggestion that countries needed to spend more on their militaries and police, I was always told, oh, that's too political. We cannot survive on it's too political. It is a here and now requirement to invest. Investment into a joint operations center or a joint fusion center is a must for countries, for members from the police, the military, the Coast Guard, intelligence, all working together and share information across agencies and have the right personnel to properly handle evidence when operations are conducted, cooperating with neighboring countries and global organizations. I would ask yourselves, how many countries have a joint operations center? This is a requirement that I would say that we needed 30 years ago. And some countries are still struggling to even have a joint operations center. #2, I have 3 recommendations. This is #2. My second recommendation is aggressively pursue transformative technologies. It's a game changer for countries. In the United States, technology drives US military strength and lethality, such as AI, supercomputing, 5G, Future G, cybersecurity, and semiconductors. 50 years ago, our US government research led our advances in technology. However, today, US private sector research has taken the lead. As regional security challenges become more systemic and pervasive, we must implement 21st century tools to prepare, prevent, detect, respond, and recover from these persistent threats. In the rapidly evolving global security landscape, the need to integrate artificial intelligence and machine learning into defense and security functions has transitioned from a forward-looking ambition to a here and now immediate operational necessity. As leaders in your country, it's important for you to know that where we are is at a critical stage due to the volume and the complexity of data generated in today's security challenges, and it's outpacing how we traditionally do business. The exponential growth of data availability and collection in the modern defense and security landscape, particularly from the public and commercial domains, presents a significant challenge for all of us, but it also provides a unique opportunity. Cyber capabilities with a trusted, like-minded vendor can secure your country's data for all your government networks. I have seen countries brought to their knees due to the vulnerabilities and the cyber attacks in their networks. You must have ironclad cybersecurity from a trusted vendor. And a vendor from a communist country who does not respect the rights of its own people and does not play by the rules and does not respect laws are not going to respect the rights of your people and the laws of your country. Unfortunately, in the cyber domain, when you're being attacked, there are no alarm sirens that are going off to alert you, and you can't see the enemy massing on the border. Advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning can also assist countries with predictive analysis on weather patterns to provide early warning for natural disasters, and leaders can then make more informed decisions. AI and ML can also be used to identify and counter disinformation and misinformation in the information space. Number 3, my last recommendation is for cross-border coordination with like-minded nations and also the global collaboration. Since transnational organized crime is networked across the region and the globe, and the border areas, rivers, national parks, the Amazon are all areas where criminal activity is hard to detect, track, and interdict. These porous areas are where illicit activity moves unimpeded. And then to the ports, which in some cases transnational organized crime control as well. And I would give Guayaquil port in Ecuador as an example. As I brought up earlier, financial crimes took first place out of all the criminal markets. And following the money trail is very complex and tedious, but it is very impactful. It requires substantial coordination across multiple international law enforcement agencies. And since we can't interdict our way out of criminal activity, there should be a full court press on this. During my time as U.S. Southern Command, I encouraged militaries and public security forces to work together, not only cross-agency in their own countries, but cross-border with their like-minded neighbors. The sharing of intelligence and information that leads to the reduction in criminal activity, that leads to the increase in prosecutions of criminal activity, and an increase in resilience for countries. The mistrust between ministries of interior and ministries of defense needs to be rectified and quickly. And I would also add in there ministers of public security. When there's a mistrust between the police and the military, it usually means that there's corruption involved. And eliminating corruption and state-embedded criminal actors posing as legitimate professionals must be removed, identified, removed, and held accountable. It goes back to the first recommendation that I made. Countries have to have strong political leadership and governance, putting tough policies into place and making those tough calls. And it can't be just tough talk. Leaders have to also tough govern. To wrap up, I said at the beginning of my remarks that economic security depends on national security. And without both, there will be no development. Latin America and the Caribbean's GDP growth for 2024 was 2.4%. In 2025, it's projected to be 2.5%. And globally, it's 3.3%, according to the IMF. But even though the economic growth has been gradual in the region, inflation rates have dropped significantly and unemployment is at historically low levels. And these are really good, positive signs. So while I have hit hard the realities of crime, both transnational and local crime, just like the hard work all of your countries have been doing to increase the economic growth, the very same is possible in countering the security challenges, which will increase economic growth faster. Popular support for democracies and its institutions has been stressed, as you all have been working overtime dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, the wave of transnational organized crime, along with irregular migration at historic levels, and combating wildfires, floods, and droughts. But as the old saying goes, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And Latin America and the Caribbean are extremely resilient, and I have no doubt that you will overcome these challenges. Nothing is easy, but we already knew that it wouldn't be. Our adversaries don't play by any rules. They lie, they cheat, and they operate without regard for domestic laws or international agreements. Likewise, transnational or criminal organizations seek to exploit regional instability, fueling violence and corruption that undermines legitimate governance. And in many cases, your countries are having to mobilize your militaries to reinforce your police because of the magnitude and severity of the crime. We can't forget nor take our eye off the ball that Latin America and Caribbean's importance to the world is huge, and it has just about everything the world needs right now. And despite so many cross-cutting threats and challenges, your presence at this Security and Justice Seminar demonstrates the power of partnership. It's an opportunity to come together to discuss how we can work together across all domains, borders, and continents to ensure a free, secure, and prosperous Western Hemisphere, and show that democracies can deliver for their people. This is the work of Team Democracy. Thank you. Gracias. Obrigado.
Agradecemos la intervención. Y a continuación,
Thank
los
you for
invitamos
your
a un
remarks. Now I would like to invite you to a brief coffee break. We will reconvene in 20 minutes. Thank you.
Bien. Vamos a continuar con el diálogo de expertos.
Let us continue with an expert discussion on transnational organized crime and its impact on development in Latin America and the Caribbean. To this end, we are joined by a variety of different experts today, beginning with Tuesday Reitano, Deputy Global Director of the Global Initiative Against Crime, Mr. Ivan Marquez, Secretary for Multidimensional Security at the OAS, Lucia Damert, international expert on security and organized crime, and a member of academia at the University of Santiago de Chile. Rodrigo Uvilla, former Undersecretary of the Interior of Chile and research at the Center for Studies on Security and Organized Crime of the San Sebastian University, Chile. Lea Jimenez will be our moderator. She is an advisor to the executive president of CAF. Thank you. Good morning. It's truly a pleasure for us to be joined by you here today. So far, this has been quite an intense activity, and we know that this discussions regarding CAF's strategic framework for justice and security for development are key. This is an area where we are training the future security leaders of Chile, as well as the future institutional officers within Carabineros. Thank you for hosting us, Carabineros. I would like to welcome all of our panelists. I don't want to take any more of their time because we are quite anxious to learn more about your perspective regarding security and justice for development, how this relates to transnational organized crime. Now, we will be talking about recent trends, different effective strategies that have been successful. Perhaps it would be helpful to know what hasn't worked with regard to fighting transnational organized crime as well. First of all, allow me to begin with 3 questions that are aimed at all the panelists, and then in keeping with your individual expertise, I will drill down to some more specific areas, either regional or specific local content. This will allow us to fully take advantage of your expertise. The first question is related to the evolution of transnational organized crime in Latin America and the Caribbean in recent years. We know that transnational organized crime has been present in the region for quite a while. However, over the last 10 years, we have witnessed the exponential growth of these criminal groups. We know that they are consolidating their influence in illicit economies. We've also heard this morning that in Latin America and the Caribbean, the 12 of the 15, the region leads in 12 of the 15 illicit economies. And so these groups have been able to exploit our natural resources, human capital, specifically youngsters in the region and other advantages to really grow these illicit economies, to wash, to launder money from these economies through the regular economies. And this clearly has been quite a challenge that we need to address as a region. Moreover, these organizations and their dirty money have bled into the economies and state institutions. More recently, we have seen that they have been funding political campaigns and electoral campaigns, and that is very important as far as democratic institutions are concerned and as far as democratic governance throughout the region is concerned. And of course, key for sustainable economic growth in the region. Now, given this context, I would like to hear from you. Regionally speaking, how do you view the evolution of transnational organized crime in the region, and what are the key threats we face today. Of course, we know that transnational organized crime is very dynamic and is constantly evolving, and we know that these organizations are quite adept at adapting quickly. So we know that we need to move quickly. We need to understand what is on the horizon as well in order to be better prepared. So what would you say the region's primary risks are today, or threats? Let's start with Rodrigo. First of all, thank you to CAF for the invitation. I would like to invite all of you to read through this strategy. I was fortunate enough to do so. And I would have to say that many of the reflections that we will hear today are part of the response that one can tease out from the assessment under the strategy. Now, as former Undersecretary of the Interior, well, I joined this post in 2010. And so it's been 15 years since then. And looking back, I can clearly see that there has been evolution of transnational organized crime in our economy. Now, the document refers to macro figures, and I would like to just pick out two examples. In 2010, when I led security, Chile was a transit country in terms of drugs, primarily for, or practically exclusively through our ports. The drugs would transition to other markets, and the consumption in the large cities in Chile was quite low. But today, the situation is different. The initiation age of drug consumers in Chile is the youngest in all of Latin America, age 15, marijuana and cocaine primarily. So we stopped being a transit country and turned into a consumer country. And today, we are a producer country as well. A great deal of marijuana is grown here, as well as synthetic drugs. So I think over the last 15 years, this country, which is quite isolated, regionally speaking, from organized crime, has undergone a significant change. We know that there are new crimes listed, regulated. They existed in other countries. But what's quite interesting, and I wanted to truly underscore, is the impact that all of this has had on the economy, which of course is quite relevant. For example, the bank president talked about the cost of crime as a percentage of the GDP. It's the lowest in Chile when you compare it to the rest of the countries throughout the region, but it's quite high. But apart from the economic cost, the impact of money laundering, the impact of in the informal economy in Chile, which, by the way, is closely tied to organized crime, and this does have an impact on the economy. We know that. But again, what I'm most concerned with today in 2025 is the impact that all of this has on our institutions. The sociological component of insecurity is key. Now, for example, there was a UDA feedback survey that was held last year in 2024 and related to the question, who is best prepared to fight crime? 54% of the Chileans said that authoritarian governments, and only 34% refer to democratic governments. Now, why am I pointing this out? Because I know I'm running out of time. I want to give others more time to speak. This means that today, Western society views that democratic institutions have less credibility today than in the past. That involves all the different institutions, the police, armed forces, all the other institutions. And if there is no trust in these organizations, the rest will crumble. I think that this is a very serious survey. And when it says that 54% of those surveys believe that authoritarian governments are better prepared to fight crime, is something that we really need to focus on and ask ourselves, why? What are we doing wrong? What aren't we doing right? And then going back to the commander's remarks, all of the state's resources should be available to address this scourge. Thank you, Rodrigo. Luciana. Thank you to CAF for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here at the Police Academy. I haven't been here for a while. Quickly, one of the major issues that we have in terms of transnational organized crime is that it's constantly evolving, and now it is uh, no, it's no longer a league of large regional organizations, but rather we see that it is made up of multiple franchises, making it much more difficult to address a legal or an illegal market that is no longer run by one group or one leader. Now, everyone here, members of the police forces and law enforcement agencies, knows that when you talk generically about the Tren de Agua, you know you're not just referring to the head in Venezuela or all the members down in going down the hierarchy in other countries. It's not just that. It's not one individual and the others behind that, but there's thousands of mini groups that are related to illegal markets. And secondly, the illegal markets do not just focus on single products. In the past, they had very concentrated criminal structures focusing on arms trafficking or human trafficking, but it's no longer like that. The situation has changed significantly, and this makes it more difficult to tackle these organizations and to investigate the crimes as well. We know that when individuals are arrested and then sentenced, and then they go to jail, but things change after that. And Rodrigo also referred to how in our societies we do not necessarily punish purchasing illegal products as much. Drugs, we know, are viewed as something much more complex today. Legalizing drugs, in retrospect, does not work. We have more coke production than we did 30 years ago. There are more hectares assigned to that, larger number of deaths, and drugs do not generate more money than other illegal markets. If you focus on Colombia and Peru, the main cocaine producers, you can see that those organizations are also involved in illegal mining, migrant trafficking. If you go to Brazil, you'll see deforestation, theft of livestock. And so the market of organized crime and illicit activities is quite multiple, varied. And sometimes when cars are stolen, you might view that as something minor, but it's part of a larger criminal structure. Now, what has been the result of all of this in the region? Well, as Rodrigo said, I would have to say that the main threats can be whittled down to three. The most important one is that these organizations, present in many countries, have entered into politics from the bottom up and from the top down. Not just in politics, but in the realm of justice as well, in the legislative sector. So we see that they have quite the capacity to purchase favors because they have many resources. And we know that in not all the countries, political or electoral funding is quite well regulated. So we all know that this is happening. The second level that I would like to mention is that all of this is withering away at democracy. And there's a feeling that the institutions can't do anything. The penitentiary system, the police, the justice system, there's this feeling that none of those organizations can do anything. And so there's this major institutional threat. The institutions try to respond, but they find it quite difficulty given how the illegal market mechanisms operate. And I would say the most complex issue is that Well, when we started with all of this issue 25 years ago, we saw that in some of the Latin American countries, there was this culture of illegality. And in some countries, we knew it was this situation. People would purchase stolen goods, others would turn a blind eye, etc. And I would say that that is something that has spread across the entire region. One could say that this culture of illegality and that the feeling that the illegal markets are present and thriving is very closely tied to the hundreds of thousands of young people who quit school and quit jobs during the pandemic. We know that this is closely tied to the extremely high levels of drug use and alcohol use in the region, and also highly tied to this ongoing standing demand for products and articles that are related to illegal markets. And here I just wanted to drive home the concept that one of the most complex issues in the region today are us, people. Today, what we have are roughly 4 million Venezuelan immigrants who are spread out throughout the region, and they tend to be tied generally to illegal criminal organizations. And then we also know that human trafficking is a big issue, primarily women for sexual slavery and as sex workers. And these individuals are moving throughout the region. I'm sure you've seen them. And I think that's where we need to stop and focus, because it's likely that our governments and our justice systems, if they're not unable to address that, I think it would be more difficult to address everything else.
Muchas gracias, Lea. Me gustaría agradecer a la CAF por la invitación.
Thank you, Leah. I'd like to thank CAFA for the invitation, for being here at the Carabineros Academy, and especially congratulate you for the launching of this security framework. This is major progress, and let me go straight to the question that I believe is progress in the way in which we face this current problem of organized crime. This strategy, then, I believe, is here at the right time, because from this international or regional point of view, from OAS, we believe that organized crime has changed, and I agree with what the other two panelists have said. But just to add a few more characteristics of this type of organized crime. Organized crime, I see it in the Americas, acting more or less in the same way. There are three elements, as my colleagues have just mentioned. A structure based on independent cells. There are no more Pablo Escobars, El Chapo, people we knew because we saw a face and we could identify as chiefs. Second, an activity diversification. Cocaine is not the most profitable product anymore for these organizations. It's not the case. In countries like mine, I come from Brazil, we have different types of fuels. Cocaine trafficking, not only for inbound consumption, because it also became an important consumer market for that drug. But cocaine represents close to 18% of all of the earnings in Brazil of a criminal structure that is huge. The crime convergence, we see illegal mining for gold, human trafficking, wildlife and flora, racketeering, blackmailing has transformed the crime scenario in a generalized fashion. This is not specific to Brazil, Chile, or Colombia. It's a regional characteristic. We have seen in the last few years what happens in Ecuador, which was one of the safest countries in the hemisphere, what's been going on also in Uruguay, Chile. The scenario and the context has changed significantly. From the security point of view, countries that were tourist destinations in Kitts and Nevis or Antigua and Barbuda, they have become drug routes and other illicit acts, and that is also coupled with violence and crime. And the third feature, and this is just an example, specific example, which is the sophistication of the business model they use. This is important because in spite of the fact that the drug is, or drugs are not necessarily the main illicit product. This is an example coming from one of the expert groups on maritime drug trafficking. And this is an example. So we can continue on with the discussion. In order to produce a kilo of cocaine in the producing countries, the cost is approximately $1,200. If this kilo of cocaine comes from the States, it becomes $30,000, the cost. The resources, and that is a mechanism, that is an MO. If the $30,000 do not go back to Colombia or Peru or Bolivia, they are now turned into cryptocurrency, and they go to Asia, where they buy cigarettes, counterfeit cigarettes that come back to the region through contraband, and they create earnings of about $200,000. So an initial investment of $1,200 becomes $200,000 after all. And this is information from the expert group on maritime drug trafficking group. So this sophistication of the business model enables huge revenue sources, which means that for our policing efforts and seizing this drug, if they are able to market 10%, only 10% of everything they produce, it is already commercially worth it for them. So it's a daunting task. It reminds me of Sisyphus of the Greek mythology. We're pushing a rock uphill every single day with a huge struggle to get to the second question, which is the threats. With so many resources and with so much sophistication, it would be natural to think that organized crime has become part of the institutions that are supposed to create obstacles to them. So I'm convinced that we need to strengthen the state-level structures, not only to strengthen democracy, because it keep being infiltrated by these organizations, but we have a real problem in the region of territorial control. Let me talk about my country in order not to be disrespectful. 14% of the whole territory in Brazil has the presence of organized crime that is proven. We're talking about 22 million people in one of the 34 countries in our continent. So let's among the threats, regaining territorial control and strengthening the institutions are two tasks that are key in order to keep on fighting this scourge. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And my apologies for speaking English, and I will justify my Englishness by not repeating the excellent and very articulate comments that all my colleagues who have preceded me on this panel and in the morning have already said. Accurately, I think, describe the situation of criminal economies in Latin America, the impact they're having and they're enabling. But what I would like to say, I think, is from the perspective of our organization, which is global, we create the Global Organized Crime Index, which General Richardson quoted statistics from in her excellent keynote. When you look at the 193 countries in the world, when you look at the global trends, you're seeing many of the same things. It is not fair to say here that there is any region in the world who is winning the fight against transnational organized crime. In fact, what we see is a set of systemic and institutional and multilateral vulnerabilities that have created an environment in which the illicit economy can thrive and grow. We are currently looking at a global economy that is experiencing or is manifesting the most acute levels of inequality, where the greatest concentration of wealth is held in the fewest hands, and more than 90% of the global population cannot achieve a sustainable living wage and improve upon the conditions of their own economic and development situation generation upon generation any longer. This is, of course, a facet both of changing environmental conditions, but also changing geopolitical conditions.
We are seeing now the highest levels of migration globally. Most of that is irregular. Most of that is people moving from situations of low-income countries, countries low on the human development scale, to the countries that are highest, but actually even those are struggling to absorb them, and it's causing acute political fractures in those domestic economies. The trends around trust in institutions, around trends towards democracy and belief in democracy and democratic governance as a means of political expression are falling all over the world. You know, if you look at indices like the Freedom House Index, the number of countries that are seen to be valid democracies is falling. All of the barometers and statistics which show trust in democracy are also falling. We are seeing a rise in violent conflict, a rise in violence, and an increase in the number of interstate wars, and evidence that our ability to resolve conflict is falling. So more wars are going unresolved. When you look at the diagnostic, or I look at the diagnostic, in fact, I feel that what we have allowed to be created over the last decade and a half since the turn of millennium is a set of structural and institutional weaknesses that have come as almost part of the philosophy of globalization. They've come in the way that we've designed the international financial system, allowing the creation of offshore jurisdictions where wealth can be moved into, accumulated, and then deployed without any connection any longer to the people who own them. And that offshore financial system is both a contributor to the inequality I spoke of, but also to the fact that you can more easily influence global policy, influence policy decisions in specific states, and manipulate elections through both targeted campaigns, through corruption, through bribery, and through disinformation. We're also seeing a similar set of weaknesses in the global trade infrastructure. So the extraordinary proliferation in the number of special economic and special manufacturing zones in ports, in key hotspots of global trade that allow both the movement, the extraction, and the value enhancement of trade in a way that is very much outside of our systems of global surveillance. And at the same time, and a lot through the responses to the countering and the financing of terrorism, we have pushed more and more people out of the formal economy and into the informal economy. So we have growing informal economies, often focused around the places where value creation, so extractive industries are most present, that have meant that these people are no longer active members of the global economy. They're forced into situations of greater and greater vulnerability and are more exposed to criminal capture. All of these facets together, to take a football metaphor, is I think we created an own goal. We created black boxes in our systems where we no longer have the capacity to do monitoring. We no longer have the capacity to take interventions or to understand what's happening. And into that has risen essentially a modern day oligarchy, where the global economy is focused on the most wealthy, and where in turn, ordinary people feel a sense of disenfranchisement. They feel a sense that they can no longer achieve a development for themselves, and they feel a sense that the systems work against them, they no longer trust institutions, and that elites behave with impunity. And that ecosystem and the infrastructure is, firstly, it enables crime, and crime has gotten closer and closer to politics, but it also prevents us responding to it and creates a legitimacy for criminal groups who in some cases do. But I think the most worrying development that I've seen, and one which is very important to discuss in the environments of multilateral conversations like this, is there are a growing number of states who have actually created an almost symbiotic relationship with organized crime, and they use criminal groups as a means of foreign policy. And General Richardson spoke in her address and implored us to use all the tools we have to address the phenomena. Certain malign states are using geocriminality essentially as an instrument to further and increasingly undermine our ability to respond. So I think as we move through this conversation, the importance of multilateral actors is large. The importance of multilateral actors ensuring their integrity is also large, and then filtering that all the way down to the state level. And I'd just like to take 30 seconds to respond to the point about why autocracies are seen to perhaps be a more compelling answer to criminal groups. And I think that's because autocracies have internalized criminality. So they are more effective because they have a higher degree of control over criminality because they've created the complicity that allows them essentially to switch them on, switch them off, deploy them, and gatekeep them. But our Global Organized Crime Index, one of the key conclusions we found is actually democracies are far more resilient to organized crime. And when you look across it as a multidimensional issue, all of the pillars, and we have 12 pillars of resilience, when they are all present and they are all strong, the state is in its strongest position to respond to the illicit economy. Thanks.
Muchas gracias, Judy. Realmente extraordinario escucharlos a todos.
It
Yo
was
voy a tratar de
extraordinary
hacer
to hear you all. I will try to summarize this very briefly. What we take from this is that there has been a significant paradigm shift in terms of crime, especially in organized crime in the last few years, in the last decade, if we could say so. We became consumers of drugs and not only transit paths. The changes in the way in which transnational organized crime works or operates, there's not only a change in those pyramids structures. Today, really, they have adopted characteristics of the democratic systems. They work as networks. They're much more democratic and spread out. And unfortunately, they're using these tools doing evil. And on the other hand, they're also they've also diversified the markets where they operate, and that means that the scope and the reach and the impact of organized crime expands practically to all economic, social, and political contexts because of the capacity they have in order to generate and produce money with which you cannot compete, basically. And of course, the huge capacity of exploiting regional logistics and global logistics chains in order to commit crimes. And all of this leads us to the fact that unfortunately a regional feature of a culture of acceptance or the culture of illegality, as we call it, means that many of our youth, unfortunately, when faced with the absence of opportunities in order to get ahead, in the absence of opportunities to have a better quality of life, they simply feel that it's just almost natural to join the ranks of organized crime and to contribute, unfortunately, to that dark side of our economies and our societies. And I believe the most important part is the fact in this conversation is to make this topic visible. Rodrigo was wondering, what are we doing wrong? And I believe what we're doing wrong, maybe, is that the security and justice aspects were there. We knew that we had institutional problems, and we knew that we had to face them through reform, but we did not put them at the top of the list in our priorities or agendas of our country.
And today, I think we have witnessed interesting, significant changes with regard to funding public policy. And I see quite well that international financial organization has included in its analyses the very high levels of insecurity in our countries and how these are a bottleneck for the LAC region. Now, why is that important? Well, because that brings us down to the level of ministers of finances, which are often those who define financial policies, budgets. We know that they define the resource allocation to each sector. So I think that has been a crucial change, a positive change. Of course, we need to continue working on all of this because often we might think that the crime is happening over there, not in my backyard, or affecting other groups. But today, it has it's a cancer that has permeated every level of society, and so we need to focus on that. Now, the second question is as follows. We have seen, and you have referred to this, we have seen how organized crime is engaged at multiple levels, at the urban level, it's involved in the local level, national, transnational, and they are quite effective in their ability to to work in a network fashion. Now, when we look at our institutions, specifically public institutions, we see that they work together as well, and they work with civil society, and they work transnationally. Nonetheless, we face major difficulties with that, with those networks, correct? So this is an issue that we have also addressed within the strategic framework, and it's part of this proposal to have networking at different levels, that our work go beyond the region. As Tuesday mentioned quite well, the reality is that the problem is not just in our backyard in Latin America, it's global. As such, institutions should be global. Now, with regard to your perspective, what would you say are the main hindrances that prevent that the linking up at different levels and the networking, including with multilateral organizations? And what specifically would you recommend to enable us to work in a more connected, interconnected fashion? Let's start with Rodrigo. Now, thank you for that. I would have to say that you have reached the pain point with regard to public policies applicable to security and law enforcement. So it's not just about transnational organized crime, but it's also about local crime, regular crime, one could say, which is still a priority. And protecting against these crimes is something the states need to do to protect citizens. Now, oftentimes we conduct critical analyses of the institutions, and that's a legitimate task in any exercise, correct? And so often the emphasis is placed on systemic aspects related to security organizations. And that's fine. There may be technical, scientific, or political approaches because these organizations are part of a policy political system, and often the institutional performance is evaluated, assessed, but very little tends to be addressed in terms of how they operate. You refer to the different levels, correct? Local, national, transnational. But if we delve deeper down within these different levels, you'll see that there are sub-levels. And so it's important to align objectives and align incentives. Let's talk about specific examples. You have the education budget in a country such as Chile, and you see that despite this large budget, we see a high growing rate of school dropouts. 14-year-olds, 15, 16-year-olds are the individuals dropping out of school, and they are being recruited by these organized crime gangs for micro-trafficking or for theft, what have you. Now, why? Well, because they are more vulnerable to organized crime recruiters. Now, and I'm going back to your idea here. We have the Ministry of Finance and making the budgets, but no one really focuses on those budgets and including some sort of preventative mechanism to keep those kids in school. And why are they dropping out? We need to keep them in school. That's one of the key tools. The longer they stay in school, the less appealing it would be for them to enter this realm of organized crime. So I refer to aligning incentives, aligning objectives, and we are lacking in common objectives. Secondly, let's define common criteria. We know that there are statistics from different institutions. For example, the Undersecretary of Crime Prevention said that today, finally, and kudos to you, finally, and today, we have a single rate referring to homicides. That's basic. We now know how many homicides there are and the causes. Because we don't have the information, how can we prioritize limited resources? I can provide you with many different examples. Data integration is key. This is a bill in Chile that has been shelved for so long. We are just recently standardizing the technological resources of our two police bodies. Very well qualified, but they have different technological resources. So again, aligning incentives and standardizing criteria with regard to police resources across the board. And third, perhaps most important, reply for the Chilean example, because I cannot speak on behalf of any other country. That would not be fair. And I think it would be important to prioritize interinstitutional strategies. There is a pilot experience, in fact, that has not been applied across the board in Chile, and I'm referring to the coordinated strategy units. These are basically clearinghouses where there's a wealth of information and the people sit down and share the information. For example, there's a council where you have the director of the gendarme, the director of the police force, the director of the maritime authority, and it's nice to see that these institutions are working together to share information and such fight crime within the penitentiary system. So, interinstitutional strategies that are effective, profound reflection on the multilateral efforts that are being carried out and are required, and the other two I mentioned earlier. Now, as an authority, I have taken part in many different UN, OAS, multilateral councils, and so the question is, how much of that actually trickles down to the operational realm? I just wanted to underscore how the operational units have been extremely effective in recent years to stop organized crime organizations that have come from abroad, and they're operating here in Chile. They have been quite effective. We know they've come from other countries. So we know that these multilateral platforms can be helpful for all of us to make sure that international cooperation among our law enforcement and police agencies be effective and that they're not tied to personal contacts. Now, often as an authority, you can see how the police organizations can say, I have an excellent contact from the police academy in X country throughout the region. That's wonderful. That's fine. But we would like for those to be institutional contacts. And everyone from the most northernmost point in the hemisphere to the southernmost point in the hemisphere needs to work together. And for example, CAF is helping with that because thanks to this, we have a common objective with a common basis, common understanding, common language to fight all of this. And this is something obviously that goes above and beyond the institutional organization. So if we are able to be more robust individually and then collectively, we will be more effective. Thank you. Thank you, Rodrigo. I agree with everything he just said, so I will not repeat that. I would have to say that 30 years ago, Latin America was facing economic crises, and we were all saying, okay, some were saying, in order to deal with inflation, we need to print more bills, so we'll have more money. Now, we know that that is not the solution today, okay? As far as security is concerned, we still are coming up with these crazy ideas such as let's print more paper bills. Now, we know that this topic is quite political in nature as well. And because it's controversial and political, the law enforcement agencies are often thrown into this difficult issue. In Chile, we know that the police heads are often, there's a great deal of turnover every 8 months, or the ministers as well. So I truly think that the main problem we have is that security has become a political issue, and as a result, in most of our countries, the security policies are agreed to and passed, but not implemented because the leaders change. No, I think that's a major challenge related to sustainability and for the institutional morale, both the police forces and the prosecutors' offices and the justice system as a whole. And of course, I also believe that, well, let me refer to 4 concrete measures that I think are crucial. The first is that we need to have a better assessment, a rapid diagnostic, not one that takes months, but a quick one that is local as well, because it is true that President Bukele has been able to do away with a very major extortion issue because he has uh, stopped hundreds of thousands of smaller groups that were doing horrific things locally. But if 80% of the cocaine had not gone through Ecuador, or El Salvador, excuse me, they would not have changed that. Ecuador has an entirely different legal system. So, for example, we know that the homicide rate in Arica was very high, but it's changed because there was a quick diagnostic and then a quick response. So secondly, we also need to prioritize protecting individuals. Drug trafficking is horrible, consumption is a major issue, but I think the governments should prioritize migrant trafficking and women trafficking, social protection as well of hundreds of thousands of women and girls in Latin America is crucial. It's horrific that they are subject to this lack of protection. And then thirdly, we need to have cross-border actions. In Latin America, we have this a very relevant discourse related to sovereignty. So let's go to the borders and see what's happening. Many of you from the police forces are practically the only ones who are on the borders, correct? We know that the borders are often left to their own devices. There aren't there isn't a significant investment in the border areas, and we could fill our borders with mines, but that would not be helpful. So I think it's crucial to go back to vibrant economic development mechanisms along the borders. The Chile-Peru border is very permeable, and so it's also important to reinforce cooperative activities there, but it's not the only border in Latin America with major issues. And then the fourth topic that has less of an impact on us directly, but it should still be a priority for Latin America, is the Amazon region. Ivan was talking about different areas where there's no major state presence, and the Amazon region is an example of that. In Brazil, Peru, Colombia, the levels of illegal mining are high, and then the resources, the proceeds are laundered. It's horrific. And if we see that this narco illegal mining continues to grow there, and that I think is an opportunity for us. It might be less appealing electorally speaking, but I think we could have an interesting regional strategy there that could be linked up with the IDB and the CAF's other plans. It wouldn't be a single security strategy, but it would be a regional collaborative strategy. Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that we're talking about the major challenges in coming up with articulated responses. I would have to say that we continue to use the same models to fight organized crime or any type of crime, and that is quite common throughout the entire region. There is a perspective, an approach that's not so systemic in terms of security. And this is not just about transnational organized crime, but street safety, street security that our citizens need. People in the streets want petty crimes to go away as well. They want safety and security there. In Latin America, particularly, and in the Caribbean as well, public security is viewed as a part of the purview of the police, and that's it. And we need to change that vision. we should have changed it a long time ago. Security is something much larger, grander, and we need to change the security paradigm to include other stakeholders, such as the education sector, health sector, social security sector. I've been saying for 20 years now that this is it was a modern security perspective, but it's no longer modern. We need to upgrade our security perspective, how we face security, change this paradigm to have a more inclusive vision of security where all the different state players are responsible and where society is responsible as well. That is crucial. Secondly, I think today we know that security has become a political priority in many different countries for the worst reasons. People can no longer live peacefully and send their kids to school peacefully. They think that something might happen to their children. There's no peace of mind there. So I think one of the issues is that for many years, we were not prioritizing security. During electoral periods, we always hear that health and education are key priorities in the region. Of course they are, but security has always suffered, if you will, as an area that has not been prioritized from a politics perspective or from an investment perspective. That's very important. We can boost our our coordination and our participatory capacity. We can have a more risk identification, threat assessment capacity. But if we are not going to have the right investments, we will not have the resources to combat crime, any type of crime. We know that these organizations are quick to adapt and they are leaps and bounds ahead of us with regard to their MO and their ability to secure their objectives. And thirdly, we know that there is weak interagency and inside the agency coordination. The agencies do not share information. They're not so good at having joint operations. So I would have to say in our countries, there are very few examples of complete and full coordination. So
of course, there are difficulties in coordination among agencies in the same country. There are many more difficulties of doing it internationally, of course. I agree with Rodrigo that my fourth point and final point is that the capacity of international organizations in bringing in coordination and cooperation solutions among countries is key. The political fora of OAS and other organizations such as CAM, Mercosur, SICA, CARICOM in the Caribbean are used in a very limited way. Transforming, turning this cooperation center where countries are already represented with technical capabilities in order to do it so that we can internally improve something a bit fundamental and a way of strengthening the states and their response to crime. The reality, and it's just a provocation, transnational organized crime achieved the success that we did not achieve as countries with multilateralism. They are integrated, they are coordinated. Among us, we are still, we're not there yet, but we do have the tools. That is my main message.
Thank you. I've been very interested in the course of the conversations we've had this morning around the statement which ended the video we watched, that you can't have development without security. It's also been said that you can't have security without development. And I think both of these things are fundamentally true. And what we have to look for when we're having a conversation around prioritizing institutional investment is recognizing that some things are crime-specific interventions and some things are enabling environment interventions. And you really need both. So what we heard in all the descriptions about the trends and the manifestations is that we have critically damaged the infrastructure of our ability to respond to crime, and we've created an ecosystem in which crime thrives. So I would argue here that it is incredibly valuable to see development banks come to the table on a conversation like this, because I think development actors know you don't get a quick answer, and that you need to continually invest and build that enabling environment, which ultimately is your long-term solution to responding to crime. The direct interventions, law enforcement-led, security-led, focusing on prisons, focusing on the financial crime aspects, investing in FIUs, are all exceptionally important, and they need to be strategically done. But they also need to be connected to the things that enable the criminal infrastructure. So for me, these are the levers of the economy and building up an equitable economic framework. They are levers of integrity, pushing those out in every single department so that you have transparency, so that you have effective delivery, and that people can feel that the public money that's spent is accountable. You need very much to look and connect to conversations around trade, trade investment, trade infrastructure, and how it functions. You need to look at diplomacy and multilateralism and the kinds of connections and political messages that are sent. And I think you really need to look at the community level. So the opening question asked, do you do nationally, regionally, internationally? Well, you also have to do it at the very basis and the ground. And I know there's been a lot of incredible work done on citizen security and community security in Latin America, and those are important investments. And in this, and I feel obliged to say it as a representative of civil society, that investing in civil society, protecting civil society, and growing them as a functioning both voice in the discussion, agent of prioritization, what matters to a community to build up legitimacy, but also to protect the most vulnerable people. And we use the word resilience a lot, resilient communities, resilient states, and civil society have often been the agent of resilience because these are long-term problems and long-term investments. And in the meantime, robust communities can be a way of mitigating the worst harms and bouncing back after terrible shocks. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Tuesday. Un tema que quiero rescatar de lo
Thank
que
you,
dijo
Tuesday.
Lucía.
Something that I'd like to rescue from what Lucia said when we're still thinking that security and justice are political topics, and sometimes we get lost in that discussion of the right or the left or whatever the spectrum in politics is. Anyway, we look at how organized crime acts. They don't think that way. They don't have that barrier to overcome, to become coordinated and to work as a team. Unfortunately, criminal teams. So we need to be able to overcome those mental barriers and understanding that this has to be a public policy, regardless of rights or lefts or ideology whatsoever. So, and that would allow us to free our minds of certain concepts and to make progress in state level policies that are so urgent and so important. And on the other hand, the issue of the systemic view that many of you mentioned, that's something that we need to overcome. In many of our countries, there's an invisible barrier between the work of the national defense organisms and internal security, or some institutions that handle sensitive information. They say we cannot share it. So then why do you have that information if we are not going to if we are not able to share it through well-designed channels so that to address the threats that we face. So we need to change the way we think and to look at this more systemically, and also how we address going beyond the traditional institution which is proposed by CAF in its framework. Looking at education. because they're all components, important components of a comprehensive whole that needs to work to be able to fully address. We have just a few minutes, and I'd like to ask this question anyway. If you could please use a minute and a half each. I'm the worst chairperson. I have many more questions to ask, but everything that you have said so interesting. In terms of trust, the concept of trust, we know that one of the biggest challenges we face is citizens' trust on the institutions, but specifically towards two institutions that are fundamental pillars of the rule of law, which is security and justice, law enforcement and judiciary system. Um, Please, each one of you tell us whether we have a magic wand. If we had a magic wand and we were to choose structural changes or reforms in the management models that will allow us to regain that citizens' trust, or what would you recommend in that sense? Let's go with you, Rodrigo, once again. It's an easy question to you. Yeah.
I think one could list a series of performance aspects that could be key for our institutions. First of all, I think it's important to do this with the institutions and not against them. This has been discussed broadly in Latin America and in my country. People think that it's necessary to reformulate the entire justice and police system, and there are others who think we just need to improve it and modernize it. Secondly, we need to work on these reforms from a scientific basis. We need to work with universities, academia, international organizations, and we need to work with evidence-based public policies. In Chile, we say, let's not base this on our gut, but on our brains. Why? Because we have seen, as sociologists have say, that there's a great deal of ideology. And I think that we have enough evidence to know what we need to do. You can improve judicial, legal, investigative systems. Oh, by the way, one piece of information from 2013 to 2023, there was a reduction in sentences in the public system by 25%, 26%. And there was a 45% increase in provisional measures. So does that instill trust in our citizens? If the citizens know that most of the people who end up in the courts are sent away with a slap on the wrist simply because the investigations did not yield positive results because of lack of evidence. So I think it's important to know that public policymakers use evidence-based measures. And secondly, all the measures implemented need to be based on three key aspects. One, efficiency. We know some things work and some things don't work. And we need to be categorical in this regard. Institutions need to meet certain institutional objectives as well. We know that each contributes to a complex system. Secondly, transparency. We can see how information from cases that have been investigated don't really necessarily get anywhere unless the media gets involved. That's unacceptable. Systems need to be transparent. There's a protocol for communications. And then finally, probity. All of the institutions need to have systems and their international models that ensure institutional self-control and balances. So efficiency, transparency, probity are key. And I would like to wrap up by requesting that the political discussion, when we talk about key laws for the country, such as the AI law, for example, be evidence-based as the most important component. Intelligence in Chile has been for 14, 15, 20 years, the intelligence sector has been playing catch up. We need to have a modern intelligence law, obviously, that respects individuals' rights, and there are international models that would be helpful there. Thank you. Thank you. With regard to institutional legitimacy, I think that is key, and there are two key components herein. Citizens do not necessarily want us to solve their problems. They want us to treat them well. We all know that. Often when you are a victim of a crime, what you expect is not for the case to be resolved immediately, but you want someone to come help you with your problems. You want to be treated well, and then a conclusion further down. With regard to the police, and I'm not just referring to Chile, but generally across all of Latin America, it's important to understand where and why the police are where they are. We recently conducted a study in Chile, and we found that a large portion of the citizens' trust and legitimacy of the police force was very tied to the role the police force played in Chile during COVID. This was a very serious study database showing that what people have recognized is that the police were out in the street, that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, that the virtual police office worked well, and people got the feeling that the police were responding. And people need to know that the police are where they need to be, that they treat the citizens well, and that police are there for prevention and control. There are many countries in Latin America where the police coverage is less than 20% of the urban area. So you know that there are certain areas where you won't have police coverage. Now, as far as justice is concerned, the justice system, I think we need to make them more efficient. Rodrigo talked a bit about that. We need to significantly emphasize how victims are treated because to a great extent, individuals do not trust the institutions is because they have interacted with them and they have been let down. Those of us who haven't interacted with the institutions may have questions and doubts about their operations, but victims distrust the system because they have their experiences, and it's very difficult to gain back their trust. The third aspect related to the justice system and the police forces, this is something we see practically in all the countries throughout the region, and I don't know how to solve this, is that the prosecutors and the police and the politicians and the mayors need to be subjected to a survey related to their trust. When you have a crisis or a homicide or something, perhaps there should be a better publicity communications response by the institutions, by the state, because in the end, we have seen that there are certain struggles between the different players in the system to capture the best piece of news, to cover the kidnapping or what have you. And we're fighting amongst ourselves. And citizens feel that this piece of news might be told by different parties and under different format, and there's a lack of order. So I think there could be a better communications management to build greater trust among citizens and boost the institutional legitimacy, because in the end, illegitimacy has an impact.
Muy bien. La pregunta de $1 million.
The $1 million question, well, maybe it's not worth that much, but how to regain trust on the institutions? I think we need to think of the people who suffer from crime and violence every single day. And there's no other way except fighting impunity, showing people that institutions can work. Security problems historically in the region is precisely is this ecosystemic vision that integrates and simultaneously integrates the three pillars, police system, judiciary system, and penitentiary system. And that is part of what we need in order to rescue the capacity of the state of promoting justice. Fighting impunity in these three pillars. I fully agree with the issue of transparency. The topic of security was never discussed in families on a Sunday lunch because that's the situation now. But transparency regarding the state activities and promoting what is done is important, and to do it together with the population. Here, and it may sound paradox because I talk from an international point of view at OAS, but here going back to my time working locally with police forces, and definitely we need community work. We need to work with the communities to promote security among people, of course, within the context of their responsibilities together with the state. The territories are the first place where you feel insecure. So improving the quality of the streets, lighting, all the necessary work that mayor offices do in the different neighborhoods, and from local to global that's how we are able to get to this building of trust situation. And on the just in closing, in this local context of work, more related to the community, I have to remind everyone that it is extremely important, and we have lots of evidence that corroborate this type of policy, that which is to do it together with women. Security was always a matter of men, a very masculine topic, and we know that lots of the violence that is committed every single day has to do with toxic masculinity, with the not putting the decisions in the hands of those who are actually experiencing violence every single day. So it has to be done at the community level, with the communities, and with transparency. Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you. One of the challenges of always coming last is you have to think of something to say that's different from what people said before you. I offer, I think, 5 very quick points. Firstly, a lot of conversation around the penitentiary system. Every single country in Latin America and Caribbean, save one, has an overcrowded prison system. 40% of people incarcerated at the moment in Latin America and the Caribbean are there in pre-trial detention, which suggests that that we have a justice system that is not working, that it is prioritizing the wrong types of actors, and that it is creating essentially a very widely resonating mistrust in the justice system as a whole, because it's the end point. So I think looking at prison reform and justice reform from this starting point, and perhaps moving away from lowest level arrests and incarcerations, most of which are for drug trafficking and minor crimes, and pointing instead at the highest end of the scale. I should note, we as an organization provide support to an Eastern Southern Africa Drugs Commission, which is a high-level non-state body that makes recommendations about approving drug policy and reform. And one of their recommendations was actually to release all the prisoners who had a sentence of less than a year. And while this would play, I understand, very, very badly, potentially into political context, I think as a logic, it's very interesting to think about why people are incarcerated in the first place. Secondly, I reiterate my colleagues' comments about police accountability and the focus of policing and ensuring that that trust relationship is brought back on the ground. I would thirdly very much emphasize anti-corruption across all interventions. So ensuring anti-corruption and integrity initiatives in every intervention in the security and justice sectors is critical, as is protection of human rights. And fourthly, then, to go back to the President's point, that shift towards addressing impunity. So a lot of the challenges I think we see in the response to transnational, that there are certain actors who get to behave with international systems. So how do we address that? I think Latin America has historically long dealt with issues of impunity and developed innovations. I'm thinking of, for example, the Commission in Guatemala that have shown important lessons for the rest of the world, which they are trying to learn. There have been discussions around, potentially extraterritorial courts or regional courts. How do we as a region look for solutions to address this high level, often transnational impunity in a way that makes people feel that the tide is turning and that change is coming? And then my final and fifth point is to actually, if you look at the way that things have evolved globally, a lot of crime has moved from physical crime to online crime, and it's changed the nature of victimization. And what I see in a lot of the response debates that happen now is increasingly actually the private sector is accountable both for identifying crime, for responding to crime, and providing restitution to victims. So I would say early and proactively, it is necessary to have an engaged conversation with the private sector. Whether it's insurance companies, whether it's banks, credit card companies, online social media communications companies, all of whom are holding data, who are engaging with communities all over transnationally, borderlessly. They need to actually really have a very concrete discussion about what their responsibilities are. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias a todos los
I'd like
panelistas y
to
también a
thank
todos los
all our
presentes.
dear
La
panelists
conclusión
and all of
final
you.
es lo que ya dijimos todos,
This is,
seguridad
I
no hay
guess, the final
desarrollo,
conclusion.
sin
Without
desarrollo
security,
no hay
there's no development, and
prosperidad.
without
Ojalá
development,
que
there's
este sea
no
el
security
inicio de algo
possible. I
muy
hope this is
importante.
the beginning
Muchas
of something
gracias a
very
todos por
important.
estar acá.
Thank you all for being here today.
Agradecemos la presentación de los panelistas.
We'd like to
Y
thank
finalmente,
the presentation
para
of the
realizar el
speakers. And
cierre del
finally, in
evento,
order to close the event,
vamos a invitar al señor
we're going to
Jorge
invite
Surur,
Mr. Jorge Surur,
gerente regional sur de
regional
Por
manager
favor.
of CAF. Please go ahead.
Bueno, muchas gracias a todos,
Thank you,
particularmente
all
a
of you, specifically to those of you hosting us here, the government of Chile, and of course the Carabineros, who have received us here at such a relevant institution for Chile and Latin America and the Caribbean as a whole. More than 10 years ago, I was here. I worked jointly with other international organizations and national organizations, and we were here to spread knowledge, but we learned much more than I think we contributed. So thank you again for your generosity in receiving us here today. I would like to thank CAF, Sergio Díaz Granados, the executive president, who led this initiative to address citizen security, security and justice for development, and the value of this strategic framework. Thank you for all of that. Congratulations as well for this advancement. Thank you to my dear colleague Leah Jimenez, who has worked closely with Carlos Charles' team and who together have been working on consolidating these activities launched quite a while ago within the bank under the presidency of Christian Senedi. They have worked specifically in urban development as well over the years. Ana Bayard, the Vice President of Gender, Inclusion and Diversity, is here. CAP has worked significantly in the area of violence against women. We have seen that there has progress with regard to universality and the gender perspective. We have our climate change manager as well, environmental crimes team. In other words, CAF has a great deal of experience in this area. In fact, back in 2016, I was leading these efforts, and I truly value the way that the efforts have been multiplied and that there's a robust platform as a jump-off point going forward, and that pulls all of us together, working in a cross-cutting fashion. We work with Nicanor from Paraguay. Thank you for your support, and greetings to all the other countries throughout the region who are joining us here. You are all owners within, shareholders, one could say, of CAF. We're all partners in this. We work for you, and together we learn. Allow me to underscore three aspects that I think have been critical and explicit or implicit within the strategic framework for security and justice for development. The first is being humble. We know that criminality, insecurity, and fear have become major hurdles for development. We also know that the region is a cemetery of promising initiatives. A wealth of initiatives have been launched. We thought they were the best, but they have not always panned out as expected. In other words, they have not been sustainable over time. The PPP in Brazil, for example, and Ecuador, back in 2018, 2019, was one of the examples we used as a good example of citizen prevention and information analysis, integrated surveillance systems. And now, let's look at Ecuador. And so my first appeal to you is to take a humble perspective, and let's learn together that there's so much more to do, and that often we are engaged in scenarios that aren't as clear as we would like them to be. I would also like to make an appeal to you related to the three key components under the strategic framework, and these are multidimensional, multi-level, and networking aspects of the framework. So my second appeal to you is that we innovate. We need innovation. We are facing resistant and persistent phenomenon that is constantly evolving. 10 years ago, for example, I took place in the first global report on homicides. And in the region back then, with regard to figures, we could say that things were relatively similar. 10% of the population was affected by homicides, 51,000, 61,000 homicides. Basically the same, correct? But the places and methodologies have changed. Essentially, the inventory or the stock is the same, but the places are different. In other words, we have the new mechanisms employed by crime, organized crime, and we have seen an influx of young people. We see more young people die on a daily basis, and so the recruiting is boosted up. The more young people incarcerated, the recruiting also is boosted. So we need to do things differently. The penitentiary system has is full, has had very high rates over the last 10 years, and schooling is yet another issue. Drugs, employment, etc. And when we talk about the challenges we face today, we know that the main employer of young people is organized crime. As a result, we need to be institutionally innovative. And going back to Leah's last question and the last statement by our colleague in the panel regarding new challenges that we face, particularly cybercrime. Those are key areas. I would have to say that this is the area with the highest number of victims, the lowest number of registered victims, the quickest growth, and the area in which our institutions are least prepared. It's a very relevant example for other reasons as well. It took 75 years for the phone to have 100,000 users. The internet, 7, WhatsApp, 3, Chat GPT, 2 months. Essentially, all of us are here, practically here, we're born in a pre-internet era. We've gone from digital natives to digital network natives, and we are facing crimes that will be protected by new tools. So again, we need to be innovative. We need to work with technology and make sure that technological innovation is not a marginal tool in our institutions. I'm sure there is a lot of individuals out there focused on this. We need to boost the number in the police forces and at the state level. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us to face this crime rate that will skyrocket while we are simply taking the stairs up to the top floor. Again, with regard to the strategic framework, we know it focuses on collaboration. And I think the starting point is to provide a good example, be a role model. We have made good progress. We have worked together with the World Bank and the IDB. We have organized crime units that have fostered a great deal of information and knowledge, and we need to truly make use of all of the funding supports, initiatives, and the municipal level, the state level, and if we are going to request results, we need to provide a good example and be a role model. So let's work together. And thank you to all of you. Thank you to Chile. And again, the different programs being launched from different initiatives under common organizations and projects may be fruitful. Thank you.
Agradecemos sus palabras.
Thank you for your remarks. And finally, I would like to thank all of you for joining us here today. Enjoy your afternoon, and let's take full advantage of this new opportunity. Thank you for joining us again.